The next type of loop we want to discuss is the condition-controlled loop. And in a condition-controlled loop, the loop runs while a certain condition holds true. And those conditions can be all sorts of different things, anything from while a certain value is not entered by the user to while there's data left in a file to be processed. Those are two of the more common examples. But it could be any type of condition at all. I'm going to show you an example that's based on the user entering a particular value that causes the condition to become false. The example I want to demonstrate is computing the average of a set of test scores. The way it's going to work is we're going to write a loop that prompts the user to enter test scores until a particular value is entered. This value would be -1, meaning that a test score cannot be less than 0. That's really quite cruel to give negative numbers for test scores. So we're going to say that a valid test score could be anything from 0 up, although theoretically 100 would be the limit at the top unless there were bonus points involved. But that a test score cannot be less than 0. And that'll be the condition that we're looking for. So I've already started the program. I have the scanner class imported. We're going to have to get input from the user here, so we need the scanner class. So let's get started. First thing I'll do is go ahead and create the scanner object, which we're now very familiar with creating. Then we need an integer value for a grade. We'll also have another integer value for a total. And then to compute the average, we need a double variable. I was just thinking that I also need to keep track of the count of grades so that we can compute the average correctly. So those are the variables that we need. The way we're going to write this program is we're going to prompt the user first to enter the grade before we go into the loop. And I'll explain why in just a minute. So the first thing we want to do is prompt the user, enter a grade, -1 to quit, and then we're going to say grade is equal to input next int. Now we can enter the loop, and I'll explain again why in just a moment. While grade is not equal to -1, add the grade to the total, so we're going to write total plus equal grade. Then we're going to increment the count by 1. Then we need to prompt the user again to enter another grade. We did it outside the loop initially, but now we've got to do it inside the loop because once we enter the first grade, then the loop is going to be controlling the rest of the program. So let's copy and paste that part in right here. And then when we're finished, we're ready to compute the average. So we're going to say the average is equal to the total divided by the count. And then we'll write out the answer, systemout.println. The average grade is average. Okay. Let's compile and run the program to make sure we don't have any errors, either syntactical or logical. And then I'll come back and explain again how all this works. So let's move to the DOS prompt, clear the screen, javac, chapter 9, part 3.java. Doesn't like you to declare variables that aren't initialized in some way. All right, so total and count are the two variables that it doesn't like that aren't initialized. And that's because I'm using these variables inside the loop, and it's possible that the variable values will never be changed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to initialize all of these starting at average. So we're going to set it to 0.0, and then we're going to write total equals 0 and count equals 0. And that should satisfy the compiler's needs for us to initialize these variables. So let's clear the screen and compile again. There we go. Chap 9, part 3. So I'm going to enter some grades. I will make them easy to compute the average from. 90, 80, 70, and 60. Let's do one more. 50. Now let's enter -1. And so you see that the average is the middle grade of these 5, and that's why I did it like that. Let's try it again. We'll do it with the smaller set. So let's clear the screen, run the program. 98, 74, 100. -1 to quit, and it computes the average to be 90, which I assume is correct. Put that right here. After all the variable initialization and declarations, we prompt the user to enter a grade, -1 to quit. Grade equals input.nextInt. Grade is our loop control variable, so this is step 1, where we assign a value to the loop control variable. Step 2 is test the loop control variable, while grade is not equal to -1. This is why we had to put the prompt up here initially. It's because we have to go into the loop with a value for grade. Otherwise, our loop gets messed up. So now we've entered a grade, presumably not -1. So then it moves on. It takes a grade and adds it to the total. Increments count by 1, which is all we need to do in the processing at this point. Then we prompt the user to enter another grade. The loop continues on until grade not equal to -1 becomes false. Let's go back to the DOS prompt. That happens when we enter -1. Then it jumps out of the loop, computes the average by dividing total by the count, and then prints the result. We could have done it with a file of grades where the condition is read these grades until you get to the end of the file, or while you're not at the end of the file. Or we could have put what's called a sentinel value into the file, a -1, and we could have said read these grades until you get to a -1, because maybe you have more than one class in one file, a long list of grades, so you want to read a set till you get to -1, then you stop. The point is, though, with a condition controlled loop, that the loop is going to run until the condition becomes true. And for this case, it's while grade is not equal to -1. That wraps up our discussion of condition controlled loops. Now we're going to move to a third type of loop called a results controlled loop.